Where Bush tried, Obama, it could appear, has succeeded not once but twice, and in a field few imagined would be his strength. Tonight, America hailed as a victory the assassination of Anwar al-Awlaki, al-Qaeda's link, they said, to the English-speaking world. So, what is his legacy? How will his death be received? Tim Puel reports.
He was the Western face of al-Qaeda, not a senior commander or even a senior cleric, but the terror network's most charismatic English-language propagandist.
I eventually came to the conclusion that jihad against America is binding upon myself just as it is binding on every other able Muslim.
A US citizen born in New Mexico, Anwar al-Awlaki could speak to American and British Muslims in their own language and recruit them to the jihadi cause. Now, an airstrike in his adopted homeland, Yemen, has put a stop to that.
My reaction is, we got him. This is one of the most treasured targets we've been seeking for a long time. We all feel this is, in terms of winning that important war we talked about, the war of ideas, it's an absolutely critical victory.
Al-Awlaki was in contact with the US Army psychiatrist Nid al-Malik Hassan, accused of killing 13 people at the Fort Hood military base in Texas in November 2009. He was in contact with the underpants bomber Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib, who planned to blow up a plane to Detroit on Christmas Day that year. And he inspired Roshanara Chowdhury, who stabbed the London MP Stephen Timms at his constituency surgery in 2010.
If an atheist comes to you and says, "Give me proof that God exists," what is the proof you give? You say that you exist.
Through his internet sermons, he enjoyed a devoted following worldwide, as he'd enjoyed a keen audience of American Muslims and then British ones after he moved to the UK in 2002. He spoke here at the East London Mosque in December 2003. During the 2 years or so that al-Awlaki spent in Britain, he was in great demand as a speaker at Islamic events. The groups hosting him didn't support extremism. The East London Mosque, for example, actively opposes it. And he didn't preach violence. But he did open the eyes of at least some of his audience to a more political understanding of Islam, to Islamism. And while it's perfectly possible to be an Islamist without being a violent jihadi, it's quite difficult in these times to be a jihadi without first being an Islamist. His influence in emphasising the divide between Muslims and the West, pushing people towards violence without always advocating it directly, is the subject of a major study just published in London.
He was immensely popular. He was the face of orthodox conservative Islam in the West. He was sent all around the country, speaking at universities, packing every place he went and spoke at. A lot of the Islamic forums lit up with excitement when he came. I mean, he was really treated almost. I mean, the treatment he got really is unparalleled as far as Islamic preachers go.
Moving to his parents' homeland, Yemen, in 2004, he taught at this university, Al-Iman, where Newsnight found strong anti-Western attitudes, before later becoming prominent in the increasingly powerful local branch of al-Qaeda. Since Osama bin Laden's death, it's emerged that it was al-Awlaki's al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula that wanted to force the pace of anti-Western attacks.
What we learned from, again, the bin Laden compound evidence is that there was this division between the old guard and the new guard, and al-Awlaki represented the new guard. He was more in favor of, even though they're lower consequence, higher volume attacks, to demonstrate that they were still relevant and thriving.
Now Yemen appears to many to be on the verge of civil war, split into opposing factions and tribes after months of protests against President Ali Abdullah Saleh. Al-Awlaki's dead, but the chaos in the country may give the remaining al-Qaeda fighters more space to operate.
This period of turmoil where President Saleh is supposedly committed to transitioning, we have seen an enormous amount of instability, and in that process, unfortunately, over 65 members of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, have managed to escape from prison. So on the one hand, we've decapitated their near-term leader, al-Awlaki. On the other hand, we've now seen a diaspora of a number of the disciples across the country, which can then take action to avenge his death.
And his influence will outlive him in the West too.
If you're worried about him operationally, then we're going to say we can say we're safe for now. But if we're talking about his ideological role, that's not going to end now. His work is still, he's said everything he needs to say as far as convincing people to mobilize in favor of al-Qaeda.
America's drone attacks in Yemen are likely to continue, further weakening the terror network. But the struggle for hearts and minds in the Muslim world will have to continue too.
Tim Hewell there. The appeal trial of Amanda Knox